question is that the motion be agreed to.
Mr. Speaker.
Dr Megan Woods.
Mr. Speaker, it is my pleasure to take a call on this piece of legislation and to signal that Labor will be supporting this bill at first reading. This is, as the Minister outlined, an important day for Christchurch on our path back to normality after the events of the last 5 years. I would like to say to the Minister that I think you missed an opportunity not introducing this bill yesterday. We could have then called it the Back to the Future Day for Christchurch and signified that special day. Because, Mr. Speaker, this is Back to the Future Day was the day in which Marty McFly signalled that the world was going to come back in a very significant movie for the Minister's edification there. It was a worldwide acknowledged day. But this is an important day in terms of the return back. If we can settle down, this is an important piece of legislation. Because, Mr. Speaker, I would like to acknowledge every MP in this House on every side of the House who over the last 5 years has worked for their constituents and for the people of Christchurch and the people of Canterbury. Those MPs, some of them are no longer members in this House. I myself, like some current Canterbury members of Parliament, wasn't an MP when the first SERA legislation was passed. So I think we can all agree, despite the disagreements we may have had over the last 5 years about what was best for our city and for our province, it has been quite a 5 years we have all been through. I would also like to acknowledge all the local government members that have worked tirelessly for their communities over this period under very trying circumstances, and circumstances that probably no one imagined that they were going to have to govern under when they signed up for the job. I'd also like to acknowledge the work of the board, and I'd also like to acknowledge the many Cantabrians who took the opportunity to submit on the discussion document that was put out around what the future of Christchurch would be. And there were very clear signals from the people of Canterbury around how they saw the future play forward for them. Because this is a bill about our future. This is a bill about what comes next. And it is a very important piece of legislation. It is my hope and it is my wish, and it is Labor's hope and wish, that what we put in place next captures something good out of what we have all been through in the last 5 years. That we manage to capture the creativity, the innovation and the energy that is now so evident in Canterbury and in Christchurch. Terrible times do bring out the best in people sometimes, and that we have seen some remarkable initiatives spring up in our city, in our province. And I want to see those people, their ideas and their energy put back into the fabric of our reconstruction and what the future looks like for us in Christchurch and in Canterbury. When the initial SERA legislation was passed, it was a recognition that business as usual simply wouldn't do. It wouldn't be enough in a region, in a city that had been through what it had just been through. It was an approach that was very much for the immediate aftermath of earthquakes. But however, it is now more than apparent that the need for these kind of extraordinary powers have passed. It has receded. And the legislation that we have in front of us today is about putting this up as the option of what we do next. It's not a return to what we had in terms of the governance of our province prior to February 2011. What it is a transitional arrangement through to 2021 where we can put in place alternative legislation. Because over the last 5 years we have seen successful challenges to the exercise of powers that were contained in the SERA Act, and there's a strong argument that now is the time to restore recovery decision making and regeneration decision making to where it belongs. Into the community, into the hands of the people of Christchurch and Canterbury to once again be masters of their destiny. Because, Mr. Speaker, I have a huge amount of respect, a huge amount of belief and a huge amount of admiration that the locals are more than up to the task, that they are ready to face this challenge and to put in place governance arrangements and make decisions that are for the better of their province. But I do acknowledge, Mr Speaker, that there is still a strong role of the Crown that is needed in the regeneration of Christchurch, that there is still needed a strong Crown presence in Christchurch and a strong commitment from the Crown to how it is that Christchurch and Canterbury is going to recover. What I would like to raise, and I have tabled an amendment to this, Mr Speaker, is the submission period that we're looking through here. The Minister has indicated that this has a report back date of the 25th of February. In effect, Mr Speaker, with the House not reconvening till the 9th of February, we're expected to see everything done and dusted from submissions through to hearings by Christmas. And I don't think this is adequate. I have put forward a submission which I sincerely hope that the Minister and other parties will consider, that we extend this out to March. That this would allow sufficient time for us to have the legislation passed in time for the expiration of the SERA legislation. This would allow us to have this legislation in place when it needs to be, but most importantly for me, Mr Speaker, is this would allow sufficient time for the people of Christchurch to have their say, to have their voices heard, to make submissions and then to be heard. I don't think this should be a rushed process. This is such an important process for Christchurch and for Canterbury, and I do not think we can hurry it. But I also, my natural inclination was to go for the 6-month period and put in an amendment to April, but I acknowledge that that simply cannot be done in this case, because we do need to have legislation in place in time for the expiry of the SERA legislation. But I do ask the Minister to consider that and to see if that is something that he can do. Because, Mr Speaker, we are putting a statutory authority in place that will have control over the Christchurch CBD, the residential red zone, and all other non-residential land surrounded by residential land. This is a big thing for us to do. This is a huge amount of ministerial power that continues for the next 5 years in Christchurch. And we would be negligent in our job as opposition if we didn't ask some serious questions about that power and the exercise of it. And I think the Select Committee process is the right process for us to use, to let Cantabrians and Christchurch people have their say, to say if this is what they think is now necessary at the stage of recovery we are in. We've got questions that we would like to see answered through this process. One of them is exactly what we mean by regeneration. I think that needs some greater clarity in the bill that comes back to this House for second reading. We saw that the courts needed to define more what recovery was with the SERA legislation. There's also a reference to public engagement in the bill, but there is no clarity or process around exactly what this means. And I think to make the next 5 years the best that it can be, that we need to have clarity around that. We need to know exactly what it is that we are going to be doing. And as I've signalled, this is a process that is also that is almost entirely ministerially led still. And I want to know and ask questions and have a conversation with the people of Christchurch about whether this is the appropriate thing to be doing. Fundamentally, the question we will be asking as Labour members when we listen to submissions is this bill that we have genuinely the local-led recovery?
I apologise. A minute and a half.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Is this genuinely the local-led recovery that the people of Christchurch and Canterbury have asked for? I would ask that we consider such things as the membership of the committee. At the moment, Clause 95 of the bill allows for both Minister and Council to equally appoint members to the Board of Regenerate Christchurch. If this is genuinely a piece of transition legislation, let's not just make it static. Let's actually make it transitional. Could we have a ratcheting down of the Crown's powers towards 2021 so we shift the balance of appointments in favour of the Council as we move through the 5-year period that is under control? The Minister's nodding, that's good to see. I think there are good conversations to be had. But another question that needs needs to be asked, are there adequate checks and balances on power? If I return to that philosophical touchstone, it's going to be another movie reference, Minister. I don't know if you'll get it, Spider-Man, who told us that with great power comes great responsibility. And when we are looking at something such as this, that puts so much power in the hands of one individual, we have to be assured that the correct checks and balances on that power are there. And that is whoever is the minister. We also want to know why appeals are to the High Court and whether that is still appropriate and not the Environmental Court when it comes to RMA decision making. The point of this being is that the High Court will only make decisions on matter of law, whereas the Environmental Court can actually ask questions about the evidence and have a more inquisitorial approach to what is happening. Why in Canterbury having a separate process, we need to consider whether that is still appropriate 5 years down the track, and let's be very clear, by the time this legislation finishes, that it will be 10 years after the event. Mr Speaker, Labor is supporting this. We are looking forward to the Select Committee process, and we ask the Minister to consider extending that process out so the people of Canterbury can have their voices heard. Thank you.
Before I call a member, I just want to make it clear the process going forward. The Minister has indicated that he intends to move a particular date for the report back. The member has indicated that she has an intention of moving an amendment. Neither the Minister's motion nor that amendment will be debatable, so if members want to comment on it, they should comment on it as part of this debate.